Hi, Lennon.
Hi, Chris.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Lennon Barnica, you are on deck.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming. How are you feeling?
Big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got a lot going on right now, right? I mean, I've been thinking about our conversation and where to begin. I have a lot of questions, but I think my first, and I think I would actually, in fairness to the 100 or 200 people that might watch this, that's kind of where we're at right now. You know, a little bit of an introduction in terms of you is that you are owner of Wild Manor, which is a video post-production and editing house in Boulder, Colorado, correct?
Correct.
Is that a fair introduction?
Very fair assessment.
And in addition to being a business owner and being somebody who has had a long career in the advertising and creative field and a successful one, you're also about to be a mom and juggling a lot of this all at the same time, right? I mean, pregnancy and the business didn't start exactly at the same time. I think the business, you purchasing your business started first. So I'm curious to know how has it been, taking on both of these big challenges
at the same time. I mean, it's definitely, so since taking over the business, since we already it was a business that was already in motion, right? So then I kind of just acquired it. But acquiring it at the same time as the pandemic, and then also finding out we were pregnant, because I think I purchased it on October 1st, and I think we found out that we were pregnant and it was sticking right around that same time.
Right. So
it was literally like, just how anything is craziness. It all happens like all at once. And so it was definitely intimidating, to say the least, because you're going into a pandemic. It's like, what does this look like? What is we're halfway in it.
Right.
But still, it's like the future of advertising. Are people going to continue to pay for ads like they have been, and all of that? And and then being pregnant and then having to take some time off here pretty soon.
Right.
It was stressful, but I think the team that I have in place and my family and Becky and the support network around it gives me confidence and is like, it's going to be okay. And I always feel like if in anything, it's all going to work out. It's all going to find its way, and it doesn't totally help to panic about it. And so I think with that mentality and where we're at now, it's like it's totally working out. So
and I'm glad to hear that you have that mindset, because that's really, that's the only mindset that you can have to succeed going through what it is that you're going through right now. And having known you for many years and been around and observed you socially in Boulder and through secondhand, through your career progress, I see you and know you to be a person who's worked really hard and always been really decent, fair, and cool. And as a result, you've drawn a lot of really good people to you and around you that are there not only to support you just because either they work for you or they know you, but I think largely because they have a great deal of respect for you and what you've been able to accomplish and how you treat everybody around you.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
It's very kind.
Yeah, it's how I see it, and I think you're in a really unique position. I would even say historically, like to be right now at this stage in your life, owning your business, being in command of that, and then also experiencing, being a mother, a soon-to-be mother. It's like it's a really powerful combination of, I would say, successes that I think you'll draw a lot of value from.
Well, and I think too, it's like I am such a firm believer in like you are what you attract. So it's like positivity and going out with a positive outlook and going out feeling confident and feeling things are going to be okay and things are going to work out. It does. And it, it's almost like this energy. It's going to sound so Boulder, woosah, but it's like the energy you put out there is the energy you get back in the world.
So true.
And I think it's like going through a lot of everything with the company and with everything in life in general, it's like it just keeps proving itself. You know, the second you get down or have a crappy day or whatever, then all of a sudden you feel like everything's crappy and it's like, oh, I gotta get out of this.
Yep.
And so yeah, and it's cool in terms of like the unique area that we're in. There's not, you know, the advertising industry, I think just as a whole, but especially in the commercial world where we're at, it's very heavy male centric, and same with the production communities. And it's all these production companies are run by men and all that. And so I think it's also really cool kind of entering at my age and being a woman and being able to be an owner of this production company, because there's not too many of us. And so that's been really cool, just to be kind of a front runner in that and being able to experience that.
It's great. It's a big accomplishment. And I think that, you know, our industry needs a lot more of that. And so that would, you know, I have a number of questions, but that would lead me to this one, which is, why is it, and I remember over the years talking with you and Becky about your previous experiences in the creative field, that was all, sometimes it was a little bit too bro humor and like constantly the same kind of shit. And you're like, there's a different angle here. There's a different voice that can be heard here.
Yeah.
Why is it that fundamentally so many of the agencies and so many creative production houses are so male oriented?
I mean, I have no idea. It's a great question. Like it's just the dominance in the bro club, you know. I think I just look at my 10 years at Crispin and just seeing super talented women in production department who are great managers, great creative leaders and all of that, and then see them get dismissed in working their way up the ladder, and then watching, you know, another male in the production department get promoted because he's buddies with the guy in charge. Right. And so it's kind of this, it's a bro club, you know, and it sucks to say that, but it's kind of what it is. And it happens in the creative side and the production side and all of that. And I think obviously this Me Too movement and a lot of that stuff is now putting this hyper focus and awareness on it to try to put people in check. And it's like, you know, yeah, this is, you know, your dude, your mate that you've known for 20 years in the ad business, and yeah, you want him to be the head, but what about this really great talent that you have, you know, right here, who could do a phenomenal job? Right. So I do think the awareness recently, it's getting better. And even just on the production part, like with female directors and male directors, and there's this program called Free the Bid, and it's awesome. And so when you're doing a production, one of the rules that the production department had was you have to include a female director in all of your pitches. So many times you're going to pitch all these directors and it's all men and all males. And so, but then Free the Bid is kind of a push for women directors, putting women up front and like how you can get them in front of projects. And so there was a rule for a while. Any project you have, make sure you have at least one woman in that pitch. And I think stuff like that, those little things will help. And I think even just recently, was it, I don't know if it was the Music Awards or something we were just watching. And there was more nominated female directors than any record history. And it was awesome, you know, because most of the time you don't see it. And it's just a pattern. Same thing with male presidents or male, you know, just we got to break the pattern because there's other talent. Well,
we're definitely at a point in time where women are able to, are succeeding more in moving to the forefront, right? Yeah. In a number of industries. And I think everybody would agree that in a lot of cases that has happened too slow, right? You know, you hope that any business, I look at mine and I think you would look at yours, you want it to be a meritocracy, right? I mean, like whoever it is that is doing the best work and shows the most talent, that's the person or people that should be moving ahead. And so as we begin to see more of that, I think that's great. It's too bad that it's had to take sort of like a movement, right? Like, you know, it would have been nice if that just happened organically, right?
Yeah.
So my question would be then, how were you able to navigate, because you've succeeded, right? I mean, you own your business now, right? How were you able to navigate through that in a way that maybe other women didn't feel as comfortable or confident in doing? Or was it not even really a thought process?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. It wasn't a total thought process for me in terms of like, I wouldn't say I had like an end goal of like, I'm going to own this company one day. And this is my strategy on how I'm going to get there.
Right.
It kind of like organically happened. So I guess I was almost at the right place at the right time, almost. But I will say, I think something that's really important is relationships and nurturing relationships and, you know, proving yourself and standing out and a lot of that stuff, I think makes a huge impact. And so it's like, you know, like throughout the history of my time in the production world, you know, I made myself necessary. Like, it wasn't like I was a worker and needed to like be told what to do.
Right.
Like, I just naturally was like, well, this is wrong. We can make this better by doing this. And just kind of naturally fell into some of that stuff and was bringing that up to past supervisors and stuff like that. And then next thing I knew, over time, I was kind of just controlling and running everything. And I think it was just gaining their trust over time and just like, you know, now I'm not only running it, but innovating it and coming up with ideas. And then for the supervisors at the time, they're like, well, I don't need to, you know, that's all taken care of.
Right.
So it's just finding that and having that motivation to do it and not sitting and waiting to be told what to do.
See, I'm hearing three things. I'm hearing just work ethic, right? Like a strong work ethic. I'm hearing leadership, right? Which is, a lot of people think that leadership means like, well, you don't get to be a leader until you are deemed a leader, right? And that is a big mistake. Like, either you're a leader or you're not. And if you're a leader, you are taking on things, as you did, that weren't asked of you, or you are finding new angles at things instead of being waited, like you said, instead of waiting to be told what to do. You took that action, right? And that displays leadership, and anybody in any environment will recognize that at some point in time. And again, I think people wait. They're like, well, you know, nobody's told me I'm a leader yet, so I'm not going to lead, right? Yeah,
or they're like waiting for the promotion, or waiting for this, or waiting for that, and
you got to take it.
That doesn't happen,
right?
So it's like, and any intern that comes in to the industry, that's like one of my biggest recommendations. Is like, don't sit here and wait to be told what to do. Like, find your way and find your path, and find, like, you know, observe and figure out what's needed and how you can help. And then make yourself a necessity. And then all of a sudden, you know, you're like, oh my God, what would I do without Joe here?
Right.
Like, we got to figure out how to bring Joe on, because I can't do this without him.
Right.
You know, and then there's others where it's like, I'm constant, you know, it's not beneficial to anybody for themselves or where the workplace you're at to be the one that's always constantly having to be told what to do. And then it's more work for, you know, everybody. And I just find so much in the workplace, it's so much like a team. Like, for us, it's like, that's where I think there's a big difference between like a boss and a leader. Like, a boss is like,
do this, do that, you do this, do that, right? Yeah,
we're a leader. It's like, I always see our team, it's like, we're all together and we're all in this together, and we help each other, we support each other. Or, you know, I go to my own team and I'm asking for advice myself sometimes. I'm like, does this bid look good, or does this seem weird, or what do you think? And just bouncing off ideas and giving my team, you know, authority and ownership in that, and it brings out the best in everybody.
The more, we've gone through a number of waves here over the years, and periods of time when we're communicating really well, and other periods of time where we're not communicating as well and people don't feel as inclusive. I feel that right now we're in a good zone of good communication, right? And including, and it makes such a difference, right? To have everybody involved, everybody included, everybody knowing what's going on, right? It doesn't mean that you're still not going to be the one that has to make the decision at the end of the day.
Totally,
but when everybody's had a piece and contributed, it's just like, it's night and day. And I've experienced both. Like, I've been through both.
Yeah. And then you feel part of something.
Yeah.
And then you get more out of people too. Because then they feel like they're a part of something.
Right.
And that's really important.
You mentioned something, the third thing that I heard that old Joe would be smiling down. As you said, it's about developing relationships. And, my crew here has heard me ad nauseum, talk about this. And, Dad, Joe, always was like, Chris, it's all about the relationships, all about the relationships. And that took me a long time to really understand. I still can do better there. Because I still enjoy the work, right? Like, I enjoy like shutting the world out and working on whatever I'm working. And then when I'm done, I'm like, okay, here's what we've got or whatever.
Yeah.
But as I've said to the crew here, the expectation from our clients, and the same would be true for you, there's an expectation that you deliver excellent work, right? I mean, that's what they've hired you for.
Totally.
Regardless of what it is, there's an expectation that what you're going to do is going to be great. And whether it's you or somebody else, somebody's going to deliver great work, right?
Yep.
And whether it's you or whether it's somebody else, somebody's going to fuck something up at some point in time too, right?
Yeah.
And what's the difference? The difference, as you pointed out, is the relationship. When you build that relationship with your team or your client, that's what gets you through those ups and downs.
Oh, it makes it so much easier. Because then when you screw up and you're close with that person, it's an easier bump. Then they hardly know you, and you screw up, and it's like, well, fuck those guys.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you never feel good about calling your client and saying, yeah, we fucked this up. But you have to. Yeah.
But if the relationship's there and it's strong,
right,
it's really important. And then even just future relationships, because then you have a good relationship and connection with that client, recommending you to other clients or... and then even within of company stuff, having a good relationship with this person can connect you to this person. And that's how I got into the ad agency too. It's like, I didn't have the best grades in college.
Join the club.
I found it much more entertaining to be social and, go out and all that. And it's interesting because there was some people I went to business school, and some people that I went to business school with that were like, study, work super hard, get straight A's. I was teetering B, C, D in finance here and there. And it was crazy. It just totally hit me one day. I was at World Market, and one of the girls I went to college with was one of the straight A's. I'm getting in the best ad agency, super focused. And then she was working at World Market and
bagging groceries.
Yeah. And then I was, failed finance a few times, skated by, and I'm here at one of the best ad agencies in the world. And, it was really awkward for me to go through, and she's like, oh, what are you doing? And I was like, I was just humble and just was kind of like, oh, I'm just, working my way through agency work and, just trying to, I didn't want to be like, oh, I'm at Crispin, Porter and Bogusky and, but it's just, I look back at that because I just think my relationship got me into that agency.
Right.
Where she had straight A's.
But she didn't know anybody and couldn't get in the door.
Yeah. And now this is different, right? For a doctor. I don't think, obviously, different industries, but if you're in the ad agency, creative world, all of that stuff, sometimes you're great on paper doesn't mean that you're going to be a success in the ad agency, which, again, so different with doctors or anything like that. You get a D on your whatever exam. I don't think I feel comfortable you telling me about what health-wise is going on. But,
yeah. Well, our business is a little bit of a rogue business anyway, right? I mean, it's, you got a lot of
melting pot.
Yeah.
Anybody falls in.
You got a lot of, you got a lot of creative types. You got a lot of hustlers. You got a lot of sales types. You got a lot of just disparate personalities that find their way into our industry. And that's what makes it great and exciting. But yeah, I mean, I know if I'm looking at resumes and stuff, I mean, I don't know if I'm ever like, I'd like to see their college transcript. Or, it's just like, what do they do?
Yeah.
Have they had a couple of jobs already? Were those jobs longer than 4 months?
Yeah.
Somewhere?
Yeah. Can they hold a job?
Yeah.
Yep.
Do they have a personality when you meet them? Do they seem like they have a backbone and they're ready to fucking work hard? Yeah. Okay. Those, that's what you're looking for. Some spirit, some spark, some hard work. Somebody who's like, okay, they're not going to be, whiny and I want to do this, right?
Totally. Or like, tell me what to do. Yeah.
So I'm curious, what was it, at what point in your life did you determine I'm a creative person or I want to get into the creative field? Because you said you went to business school. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I tried business school for like a semester and that's all it took. I was like, I can't do this accounting.
Yeah. I would say, so I took several entrepreneurship classes while I was in the business school, and there was something that was really cool about creating something, whether like in business, and that creative process of that, of naming it, logo, design, work, what you do, how you do it, what you bring to the world, and all that. And so that was really cool because you had to write several business plans and figuring out like all those steps of what you would do. And so I'd say that in terms of the work area and kind of sparking that interest and being able to like be the holder and make something.
Right.
From the beginning, not get out of school and go into law school, but like, hey, you could create anything you wanted, for the world and whatever you're interested in. So, you're hearing all these different business ideas of, all sorts of things.
Mm-hmm. But it's not like, so I was curious because I know you're a very creative person, and we'll touch on what I view as your creativity, not what I view, but like what I know of what is the bulk of your, a large part of your creative output, let's call it that. But so when you were a kid growing up, it's not like you were like into drawing or making music or taking pictures. That wasn't really part of.
When I was a kid growing up, I was definitely, let me take this bike apart and let me figure out how to put it back together.
Right.
There was definitely like an engineer brain of mine that was very strong. Mm-hmm. And so I enjoyed a lot of that. I would take my mom's dishwasher apart and it'd be broken. And I'd figure out what was wrong with it and put it back together. I failed once. I took her garbage disposal apart, and I never figured out how to get it back together. She had to get a new garbage disposal. But, like, that stuff as a kid was really... I really liked doing a lot of that. Working with my hands and building and, and that led into creativity in itself with all the woodworking and home improvement projects that we do, and the patience that it takes and the focus and all of that. And that's a creative process in itself, because so many times you're looking at something that you've never done and you're like, how do I fix this? And you have to sit and think and get creative and trial and error until you get it. And I know that's very similar in the creative world in terms of the ad, all of that. So
it's interesting because that was kind of where I was headed, right? Lest anybody who's watching or listening who doesn't know just think that you are a household tinkerer who can handle an occasional project or not. That would be a very unfair assessment of your talent. You are extremely talented. I think that if you had the financial resources and unlimited time, like, I feel like you could build a house.
Yeah.
Like, you and my wife's father would get along just great. Like, you guys could just, you'd build a whole house, right? I mean, I've seen the output, beautiful woodworking, tables, chairs, projects around the house, all this stuff. I mean, you're very, very skilled when it comes to that. And so that's how I see a large part of your creative, your creativity shines through in those areas, but that stemmed from you as a child being very curious about how to take stuff apart and put it back together, right?
Yep. Yeah, just tinkering. And
right.
A lot of that is from, I don't know if it's learned behavior from my grandpa Lyle, or if it's like in me, like him. And, that's all we would do is just tinker.
You're answering my questions before I even ask them. No, it's great, because that's what I wanted to ask you. Like, I know how important Grandpa Lyle was to you and what a huge role he played in your life.
Yeah.
And so you just said it, but I guess I'll ask it again. Was it something that was inherent in you, or was it something that he brought out in you?
That's a great question. I have no idea. Like he definitely, if it was in me already, he definitely brought it out just by him naturally doing the same thing. So, I have no idea.
I mean, because
you guys the chicken before the egg.
Right.
It's like, was that him or was that in me? And it, grew in with him, and so. But I appreciate it. It was really nice to have somebody who, like a grandpa and a figure like that in my life, supporting me in something that I was extremely interested in, and like we crushed science projects like nobody's business.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like just every science project we'd go to was like, I remember these little like copper wire spinners and magnets and this and that, and like all these kids like had half bought ones and just didn't work right, and we're like, Grandpa and I would stroll in. It's like beautifully made with wood, handmade, works perfect, no errors, just like amazing. But it's just like we both just genuinely loved it, and we would both work on it together, and it was really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
From my understanding, it was just like such a close bond, not only, grandfather, granddaughter, but, this close bond of two friends that shared very similar interests, and you guys learned from each other and taught each other.
Yeah. And I think what's really cool about all of that, and he, to say the least, is a little old school, right? So, and I think, there's that older school mentality, and I'm going to be sensitive, try to be sensitive, but where people get stuck in this is that way, this is this way. And when I was born, he was like, what am I going to do with a granddaughter? And like was kind of like, oh, like didn't know. And it was like he had two sons growing up, and he just kind of was like, well, who am I going to take? It just was, my mom was saying, not a bust, but like, oh, great, And so I think it's like hopefully a good learning experience and perspective, that just because I'm a girl doesn't mean that I'm not wanting to take up fishing or building or anything like that.
Right.
And, him growing up, that's where the roles were, right? If you were a woman, you were in the kitchen. If you were a man, you were doing this. And I think it's cool to be his granddaughter that did all the things that he would have never expected that I would have done. And I think that's really, hopefully, helped him see that, it's a little different and can be.
I mean, certainly by the closeness that the two of you shared over all those years.
Yeah.
Right. He had to, I'm sure it was a great surprise to him.
Yeah.
And probably, and a delightful life lesson at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's really important. You can't really, and I think this day and age too, it's like having that experience and knowing that, it's like anybody can be interested in anything, and just opening that box and letting people do that is really cool, and not putting us in these roles. Like, I love when I see, women in different roles where you're used to seeing a man, or vice versa. It's like where you're used to seeing men in certain roles,
right,
and then they're doing something else that's outside the norm. But I think it's so great because, everybody's got talents in different areas, and to limit us to just a certain area because of our gender isn't fair. And I think it's great to be able to let people experience whatever they're interested in without any judgment.
I agree. And, of course, historically, there's been very clearly defined roles for men and women. And in a lot of cases, those roles fit, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a great number of the population that those roles totally fine.
For sure, yeah.
But at the same time, those roles can be very limiting, for men or women. And, at the risk of sounding very Boulder myself, I believe that the spirit, our soul, which I believe is something that continues, has been before this lifetime and will continue on into many other lifetimes. I don't know that the soul or the spirit has a gender.
Yeah.
I don't think it's gender specific. I think that we choose life situations. We choose life experiences to learn. Right. Yeah. And so to suggest that just because you are in a woman's body, right, that you are supposed to do specifically what on earth a woman is supposed to do, that's very limiting to your spiritual growth. And so to see the abundance of new opportunities for all kinds of people is important.
For sure.
And I do think that needs to be celebrated and welcomed. And it really shouldn't even be a big deal.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, totally. And I think and I hope over time it'll become less,
Yes.
I even think too, there's some of our close friends back home where the men are the housewives, right? And it's like, you hear some people like, oh, that's weird. It's like, well, yeah, but it's also really cool. Like, let them, I don't know. It's just, it's like, and I think over time, the more people are dabbling into different things and outside of the gender norms,
right,
the more normal it'll become. But just supporting that in those areas, and if you ever see that, it's like, that's great.
People should be able to pursue a life that is valuable and meaningful to them.
Yep.
Whatever that might be, so long as it's not doing harm to other people, as long as you are of a positive mindset and doing what is spiritually and productive for you and for the people in your world, then yes, anybody should be able to do anything. There shouldn't be limitations.
For sure.
And I think we're starting to see more of that, which is encouraging.
Yeah.
A question that I have, as you now have entered into business ownership, right? And you're figuring it out as you go in a lot of cases. Are there any male or female mentors or other people that you look to that can provide you guidance or mentorship that exist in your life? Or are you at sea on your ship looking around the horizon wondering where the next port is?
I'm definitely a little bit at sea by myself, but that's not totally by choice. In our industry, in our community in Boulder, it's not like a production hub like New York or LA or some of these other places are. But I think it's slowly becoming, like, I see more people coming from our industry to Boulder, to Colorado, just switching it up a little bit.
Right.
So I do hope that there is more companies like us that are kind of in the surrounding areas that we can kind of unite and bond, and I can find some mentorship in certain areas like that. I would say most of my mentors and things, they're
in the past, or
they're in LA or
right.
New York, and sometimes it's like, I mean, I could definitely, let me backtrack a little bit. There's people that I know in same companies that I am currently running,
yes, that
I can lean on for support and call. But I am such a locations person. It's so much easier if, like, say, this editorial shop was also in Boulder, and it's really nice to be able to, like, go to their EP who's in town. We probably have a lot more personal face-to-face connection instead of me just calling them all the time.
Right.
So I do have mentors that I can reach out to. I guess I'm just being stubborn, and I would love to have people in person that I can kind of connect with. And
well, the face-to-face conversation, it's the best, right? I mean, I personally, text, email, or face-to-face. Like, I really don't like sitting on the phone at all. I just find it to be, my mind, I'm not engaged, right?
Yeah.
I'm just not as engaged on the telephone as I would be. Face-to-face is number one, and that's why, one of the reasons why I created this was just to be able to sit down and have a meaningful conversation like this with a number of people. So
it's so much easier. It's like, so I hope, like, there's a few places in LA that I know the EPs that I know that I could call them for any problem or whatever, but it'd be really nice if, at some point another company with an EP, a lot of years of experience, comes into town and it's like, hey, Jan, can we go get coffee and chat this out?
What made you Jan?
I don't know. I have no idea.
That's funny. That's such like a Brady Bunch association for me. Jan, middle sister Jan.
I didn't want to like call out anybody I knew.
Right.
And
yeah.
so
okay. Just, that was a very nondescript.
I know 0 Jans.
Same here.
So
who does?
It was very neutral. But yeah, I think that that'd be really nice. I think. So yeah, I'm kind of a little bit on an island, I think, and sometimes I struggle with that. I'll have days where it's like, I want somebody to look up to and to call and I mean, I could reach out to those people more. It's just a growth area where I got to do that.
I find now at this stage 2 things. Number 1, I'm very accustomed to being the ship out at sea by myself. I'm very comfortable with that now. Having done it for a long enough period of time, I know that the majority of the things that we do are things that I will some way somehow figure out because I enjoy it, right? Like it's just like you figuring out how to take it apart, put it back together. I'm of the same mindset with everything here. I find that now currently I learn more from people who just come into my periphery, right? I'll learn more about a specific segment of our business that way. Like I don't right now have the big, and I would like to, like who's the mentor, right? Like somebody that can say, Chris, I've done what you've done for 30, 35 years, and here's some things to be thinking about that doesn't exist in my life currently.
Yeah.
I would welcome that. But at the same time, in the meantime, if I gotta, figure it out as I'm out at sea, I'm also comfortable enough and having done it a long enough time and being surrounded by enough people who are helping with the effort that I feel like, we'll figure it out. And if we fuck it up, we're gonna learn from that.
Totally. And
win
that's what changes.
Or learn.
Yep. Totally. And I feel like I'm in the same boat in terms of that, like, finding, and mentorship can kind of come from anywhere, really, like there's certain even things from the team where we bounce ideas and it's like, that's actually a good thought, and mentored me out of that bad path that we were going down, or, or freelancers or anything like that. So.
Final question.
Yep.
Where do you see our industry headed? Particularly the creative industry, right? Like, there's been a lot of shift, and it always shifts back and forth to, companies using in-house departments to going back out of house. Companies used to use a big agency for everything, and then they would segment it out. And where do you see the creative field going over the next, let's call it 5 years?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's almost like, I don't want to say free for all, but like this whole world of YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and social influencers and all of that stuff, it's like they've all been given devices and things at their fingertips to be able to create content super easy. Mm-hmm. So it's no longer this, I need to go to this agency who will hire this production company to get this product. It's like it's the scope has broadened in terms of where talent can come from.
Right.
And I think it's a good thing. It's intimidating for a company like ours to know, influencer down the street can make a video for, 2 or 3K and the client buys it instead of coming to a company like us.
Right.
And I think bigger brands are interested in that content too, because I hope there's a movement and some just real authenticity content.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's the folks out there looking for authenticity and realness, and generations and things are on to companies that are, say, not doing great things for the planet, or just, like there's this whole movement of, I guess, is it Gen Y?
I don't know. What is the new gen? Shouldn't we know this?
One of the
We're
new
supposed
gens.
to know that. Yeah. The young ones.
Becky will help. Becky will let you know when she, But they're sensitive to that stuff, and they think they want content that's authentic and real, and people are, myself included. I look at an ad and I'm like, is that real? That's fake.
Yeah, it's just you immediately sense when it just feels like it's supposed to look like real, but it's not.
Yeah, like there's rarely, and I don't know if that's because I'm an ad agent in the world, but like I see an ad and I'm not like, I have to get that Tide detergent.
Right.
That really was like, that is the reason why I'm going to buy Tide. Now, but if they made something that was more real, meaningful, and touched in a way, or they're doing something impactful or meaningful for the world, I think that's where creativity's heading, hopefully. Yes. In that world. And then again, it can just come from anybody. Anybody has the tools to be able to create something, and it to be picked up by a big company that reaches out and is like, this story you made, or this, or what, and find some relationship there. And so I think the traditional ways of going down the ropes is fading.
I agree. I totally agree. And I think that small companies or big companies now have a very large amount of choice that they can utilize for how they communicate their message. So I'm going to try and string together two or three thoughts from what you've just said. Number one, which I say this a lot, I feel that it is our job, we're in the business of making an introduction. We're almost like, I see us as matchmakers to the point of what we do is try to put a message out that hopefully connects a consumer with a product, or in our field, in the retail automotive business, a consumer with ultimately a salesperson, right? Yep. Who get together to have a conversation that hopefully results in a transaction. Like at the end of the day, we're trying to drive transactions. No matter how much we want to, talk about branding, brand positioning, authenticity, which is all an important and meaningful part of leading that. At the end of the day, we're trying to drive a trend. We're trying to sell a product, right?
Yeah.
So how do you sell it in a way that's modern, contemporary, and honest, right? You mentioned like Tide. The first thing I think is like, well, to me, I wouldn't even buy Tide, because any detergent product I would buy, it needs to like have some sort of environmental, like, we're good for the planet thing, right?
Yeah.
Which may all be total bullshit, because I just watched Seaspiracy yesterday, and the whole, sustainably caught thing is a total fucking fraud. It's total fraud. So maybe the same is true of detergent stuff. But again, believing some way, somehow in the product that you're buying or the company that you're buying is important for anybody, I think, at this point in time.
Yeah.
And so what you're saying, and I'm agreeing, is that, a kid in his or her bedroom could create something just as meaningful as we could on a $100,000 shoot.
Yeah.
It just depends on who's the audience.
Yep.
What are you trying to do? Are you going for that quick kind of low budget feel that can be very authentic? Or in some cases, do you need a full-on production to make your product and company look appropriately successful, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Doesn't mean you're not being authentic.
Yeah.
I think there's waves. And so I think, and I'm sorry for talking so much on this point, but I think that those of us that have been in this business long enough still have an advantage of understanding that it's not just about, oh, here's a cool thing that I made.
Yeah.
Right? It's about a bigger picture of how do you help guide a business or a brand? How do you put together the strategy?
Oh, for sure.
How do you lay out the execution? Because it's not about just one cool ad this month. It's about, how do I market this business for a year?
Yeah. Which in there you need, like the bigger brands, they need the big strategy, big ideas, full campaigns, all of that. And I think that will still for sure survive. because that'll be needed for the brands like Ford and Domino's and Fruit of the Loom and all that stuff, because it's a much bigger conglomerate of, all of that stuff. But
right.
So I 100% agree with you on that. But I think what's cool is, at least production companies and things like that, it's like, instead of going the traditional routes through schools and this and that, but where like you see a young creator and you're like, this person's awesome, get him in this team right here.
Yep.
To start making these ads or to start creating these ideas. And so that's where it's like, some of that can kind of come play. Like, I know we'll search and find a super talented DP just through like Instagram, and and it's like, that's where it can come from anywhere, and it's no longer this route of, because everybody has a channel of communication to get out there and show their work and show what they can do.
It's truly amazing that we live in this time where anybody, almost regardless of what it is that they want to be, accomplish, do, there's a pathway to it that does not require some big gateway into an organized structure or a company or anything. That young girl in her room right now who's 15, they're out there, right? Like, they're there right now generating content and generating millions of fans and followers right now with zero. Like, they didn't have to go get a job somewhere and then work their way up. Like, they just jumped right into the pool, they're swimming, and they're creating it, and they're making it happen.
Yeah.
And anybody can do that right now. It's so amazing.
And then you see it's like, sponsored by such and such, right? So then they're like, these brands are...
They're like, oh, let's put a label on that shit right there. I like this kid.
They're like, that's mine, found it.
Exactly.
Like that's, good for those influencers. It's interesting. And it's cool though. It's like, just opens up a world that I think a lot of from starting, it wasn't there before.
No.
So, and it gives, everybody the tools to show what they can do. Much easier, like where before you had to hire a production company to be able to shoot on a high profile camera, and now anybody can go and buy a red and make it look beautiful, and you don't have to hire this production company who has this director who's the only one who knows how to operate that camera.
Yeah.
So now it's like game is on, everybody can play in the game.
Well, let's keep running hard in this environment as long as we possibly can. I mean, I'm excited for you, and everything that you will continue to accomplish with your business. I'm excited for us. For us now, we're doing everything, as I mentioned before, to move the creative to the forefront. Yeah. And that's really where the fun is. And
for sure,
it's such a fun business to be involved in. So
for sure, and it's super important, I think, for any brand to just bringing in the professionals and bringing in the people with the experience to be like, we've done this before, let's guide you through this,
right? And
all of that. So that'll I think always exist in some core or fashion, and needing us as kind of resource and almost mentors to these brands on how to build their brand and all of that.
I agree.
We have a big responsibility, because I think I read this quote, or was it through a podcast recently, and it was like, as marketers, it's really important, because either people's minds are shifted from either a personal experience or something that they've seen through marketing or through advertising. And so it's like very important. You're either altering somebody's thought process or their feelings and things on something by marketing or their own personal experience. And if that person doesn't have a personal experience, we're guiding a lot of that.
Yeah, we're setting the stage for that, right?
Yeah, marketing is
the stage for how a person feels about a business or a company or a product, which, I know there's detractors that say, oh, it's kind of stupid, it's not real art or whatever. But no, it is.
Yeah.
And I think there's this responsibility to do it in a way that is honest for everybody involved.
Yeah.
So that when that introduction or when that experience happens, it's consistent with what they thought it was going to be.
Yeah. We're like navigating culture and society, and all through our creative, strategic ways. It's like there's a lot to be said by what we're doing with, and that's where strategy and all that is really important on, like, can we make cigarettes look cool or not? And then it's like, that's what marketing did, right? They made it look cool.
Right.
And then it's terrible. And it's like, okay, well, that was bad.
Yeah.
And then it's like, so we're in charge of a lot of that. Like, making ads, making it look cool, the camel, this and that. And it's like, well, that was terrible,
Yeah.
So it's really important. As marketers in advertising, we have a really big responsibility because we're going to help shift people's minds if they don't have their own personal feelings on something.
I agree.
So,
Lennon, great conversation. I've enjoyed it tremendously.
Likewise.
Congratulations on all of your success, your business, baby on the way.
Thank you.
You're doing awesome. I love you. Appreciate it.
Likewise.
Great conversation.
Cheers.
There we go.